I've been really privileged to meet some really incredible people, not just in my industry, in other industries. And I've realised how unique the construction industry is. One of the worst things you can do in construction, which is very different from any other industry, is pull the money. Deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Small wins, get people on side, and actually it's not that difficult to transform things. Put your money where your mouth is. We're not going to be screwing anyone over here because that's not how I work. This needs to be ethical. This needs to be right. If this contractor goes bust, it's going to cost you tenfold. Let's have a conversation about paying them what they're asking for, because actually the benefit to you in the long run is much bigger. I don't know why so many people are scared of the truth, because the truth will set you free. It's just so true.
Welcome to Taking the Con Out of Construction, the straight talking show that's changing the industry, one episode at a time. Small mistakes can cost big money, and even more in time. But a small investment in listening to this episode could help you avoid disputes, delays, and costly pitfalls, while giving you the know-how to stop problems before they start. Let's turn complexity into clarity and take the con out of construction.
Welcome back to Taking the Con Out of Construction. Today we're discussing how to avoid crisis in construction, because when projects start to slip into chaos, missed deadlines, cash flow issues or poor management, waiting is not an option. Michelle, you have a reputation for crisis intervention and project transformation. How can those skills be transferred to support funders and developers in preventing their projects going into crisis?
If you listen to any of my podcasts, you know I've been doing this for quite some time. I want to change the industry. I've experienced a company going into liquidation and taking me down with it. I spoke about that a few times. I watched my dad build a business and then it go into liquidation, and I understand how families are affected by that. So that's one of my whys for why I do what I do. I'm trying to save the world, save the industry. But that isn't my responsibility to save everyone. It's not down to me. But the last 12 months, at least, probably the last 2 or 3 years, I've really been looking at the industry, how people do things, evaluating my experience, what I've learned. Doing my NVQ level 7 and getting charged with the CIOB was obviously another process, and going back to education, looking at things that I've done and processes and combining a lot of my experience and kind of uploading it onto a platform for review and summarizing my experience as a professional. Opened my eyes to a lot of things. I've been doing a lot of networking over the last 2 years for my own business. I've networked for other people's businesses before. When you're doing it on your own, it's totally different. And I've been really privileged to meet some really incredible people, not just in my industry, in other industries. And talking to other people in other industries, I've then realized how unique the construction industry is. And having conversations with them about the crisis projects, telling them examples, how I work, that kind of thing. And a lot of people have found it really, really fascinating. A lot of people have been shocked about the norms in the industry, how things go about, how things run in the industry. And it made me aware of how many people, clients, for example, that are working in the industry, or funders, or people that don't work specifically inside the industry and the guts of it, that don't understand how it works. The same as, I suppose, you don't understand the culture of another business or a culture of another country, another family. And it sort of opened my eyes a bit, my opinions on what I felt were the biggest risk in construction, where things went wrong. And at a number of these events I've gone to, there's often been banks or finance companies, or I remember having a conversation with a company that had recently pulled funding from a company I knew that my husband used to work indirectly for, and the company went bust, and kind of growling at them. They weren't from that part of the business, they were from the foreign exchange aspects. And then having this in-depth conversation with them, as apologizing, I was like, I'm a bit touchy about your company. And we went into it, and there was a whole group of people listening to what I was saying. One of the worst things you can do in construction, which is very different from any other industry, is pull the money. What I'm about to say is my opinion, and I could be very wrong because it's not my area of expertise. If you've got a factory that's producing goods and then not selling, 100% stop producing goods. Makes sense. Because you're not selling the product you've got, why are you producing more? It's very different with construction because the money comes at the end. You've got retentions and other bits and pieces, and you need to get the project completed. I've had clients that I've worked for before, and they're like, oh, it's fine if a subcontractor goes bust, we'll just get another one. We won't have to pay them and we'll save some money. I was like, no, it's going to cost you double. Because there's going to be delays, and they're not going to take somebody else's work on, and they're going to worry why they've gone bust, and they're going to think that you're the problem because you are the problem. And then you're going to have to redo the work, because even though there's no reason, if they're certified to take it over, because the way things are and the way the world's gone, No one wants to take responsibility for anything else or actually take a punt on anything or a risk on anything. So it's going to cost you double, triple, going to cause umpteen problems. When it comes to a project and it needs to be finished, because that's when you can claim your money back. Until that point, it's just throwing more money after bad. So for funders, especially developers, whoever it may be, stopping the money is always a problem. And even with clients, when clients stop paying properly for whatever reason, they've got a concern. I understand if there's a legitimate concern, the company may be going bust. Have a conversation, have a meeting, have a discussion about it, do an agreement, because the way that I look at things is different. Yes, there is a contract and there is a cost. And if the client hasn't done anything to warrant any additional costs or delays, then why should they pay extra? It's highly unlikely that that's the case. It just may not be that the contractor or subcontractor or whoever has not been able to communicate that to you or wasn't aware that they can communicate it to you, but it's highly unlikely. It does happen, but it's unlikely that any party is 100% innocent when a project goes wrong. There is that responsibility. Now, I've said to clients before, and that's working on behalf of the end user client, not working on a professional practice as a PQS or consultant, you are much better off to pay an additional sum of money to get this job completed and get it completed well. If you don't, and the contractors are struggling for whatever reason, they priced it wrong, things haven't gone right, materials have gone up, whatever the reason, it doesn't matter who's responsible. If this contractor goes bust, it's going to cost you tenfold. Let's have a conversation about paying them an additional sum of money for whatever it may be, or paying them what they're asking for. It might just be paying them what they're asking for, because actually the benefit to you in the long run is much bigger. I've had conversations with people before when I've been working with them as a consultant, and therefore as a consultant or a freelance, they're paying me for my time. There's been a situation and often egos get involved. You'll have a director and they'll be really upset about a particular contractor. And I'll say to them, look, this is what they're asking for. And one specific example, this subcontractor was asking for £1,000. I didn't think they would due the £1,000. I thought it was excessive. However, what I did think was the actual fee should be about more £500-600. What do you want me to do? I can argue it, but the cost for me to argue it could take 2 or 3 days, could take weeks, could end up costing you a damn sight more than the £400 difference. What I'd like to do is put forward and try and say, this is where I think we're at, the £600. We need this work done. If we don't, the delays on top of that. So not only are you going to pay me to fight that, my fee, when I'm not doing anything else, there's also delays to the project, a knock-on effect. For the sake of £400, could cost you £4,000, £5,000, £10,000. If it goes on far too long, could cost you £10,000. What do you want me to do? And when I put the information in that perspective, they'll turn around and go, offer the 600. If they don't take it, pay 1,000. Because I've put it in a way that makes sense. I've taken over final accounts, and I remember this one situation where this woman was transferring over a final account. We spent 2.5 hours on this final account. It was fairly complex. It was a ground-wide contract. The first hour, we were going through 3 variations. The total for those 3 variations was £150. 2 people, 3 hours, cost the company more than £150 just to discuss where she was with it compared to where I was with it, because of the amount of detail she went into. Whereas I look at something and go, right, we've got a £5,000 account. Yeah, there's 100 items on it. What is worth my time? Let's have a conversation with the guy. You can very quickly tell from a subcontractor in discussions whether or not they're blagging you, putting the wool over your eyes, or whether it's genuine from their reaction and the way they deal with things. Now, if it's genuine, it's either they've mucked up, not measured it properly, or it's a genuine valuation. You can take the stance as well, that's their fault for mucking up, but you're still getting the value. As the client, you're still getting that product the way it's supposed to be done, and it's going to be done better if it's being done the way it needs to be done for whatever reason. The value of not paying that £4,000 for your ego and the potential impact on the project could be that not paying that £4,000 costs you £40,000 in the long run. Who's winning there? And that's how I like to look at things, and that's what I'm trying to get contractors to look at, but I'm also trying to get funders to look at it. I'll be honest, we talk about main contractors not paying. I've had so many issues working for main contractors that don't want to pay me. It's not necessarily down to whether you're good at what you do or not. there is a problem with main contractors paying in the industry. Not all. There are a lot of main contractors that I've worked for and then I refuse to work for, or have delivered them from about to be going bust into successful businesses, and then I have to fight them and threaten to take them to court for my own money. I've suffered with that myself, which is where some of my passion and my experience comes from. Like, there's things that I will tell you and I spoke about on a podcast that I've learned from my own mistakes, that I've suffered, that I've lost money, I've gone through myself, and I'm not perfect. This is my experience and what I've learned. And what I'm trying to say to people is, rather than look at it with my mentality and have a who's winning, you're going to win by getting your project delivered, having a high quality project that you can sell, rent out. What is the value of that to you? And yes, okay, if you don't have the money, that's a problem, but you have ways of getting the money. And not being funny, what doesn't make sense to me, if this is your property, your asset, why don't you protect that and add a bit more? People that buy cars, expensive cars, and then don't pay to have them serviced, makes no sense to me. Well, don't get me wrong, as a teenager, I learned that lesson the hard way by not servicing or having the cheapest service, and the next minute your cam belt snaps and there you've got no car and it's gone from being worth £5,000 to being worth 500 quid for scrap. Yeah, I've done all of that. 100% I've done all that because nobody told me any different. I was a teenager. In business, this is your asset. Don't you want it to be built the best way? People will cut corners. You cut the cost, they're going to cut corners. If you're not paying them, they're going to step back. People then get nervous. Then they're not going all guns blazing. They're not delivering. They're not giving you their best. They're going to start retreating. And the way that they work on your project, they're not going to have the same passion about it because they're going to start resenting it. Why are you not putting the money into your asset and actually nurturing this asset, looking after this asset, making sure you're investing in this asset because of the long-term capabilities? And if you're cutting corners and you're not paying the contractors all because what, you're going to save yourself a few quid, are you? Property is expensive. And yet you have a 12-month warranty. What if the company goes bust? You have retention. What if the problem costs more than a retention? You have insurance policies. What if the insurance policy doesn't pay out? What if 2 years and 1 day things go wrong? There's no warranty. It's down to you to fix. So wouldn't you want to make sure that actually the people that are working on your property are putting the utmost in? And sometimes you need to add a bit. And yeah, okay, you might want to be making 11%, 12%, 5%, whatever it is, returning your investment. I get that, it's important. But isn't it better to make 4% on a return on investment than losing 50%? Or isn't it better to break even and then get the money back from your property, from the revenue, whether it's selling it or renting out, and actually, instead of the building collapsing or falling down or being condemned, isn't it better to do things up front? When we talk about pre-contract, and I'm a firm believer of the longer you spend up front, the less time you spend at the back end of a project. I reap what I want to say. I will put the effort into people, time, systems, processes. I will spend hours and hours with somebody to make sure they get something because I would get that time back. I'm all about efficiency. I'm all about putting the energy in when it's needed, putting the time in, putting the money in when you need it, and reaping the benefits. All about that. Making the hard decisions as a parent when my daughter was young, and I'm now reaping those benefits because I don't have someone that wakes me up at 3 o'clock every morning because she's respectful, because I did the hard work when she was little. Putting the hard work and the time into my sons now, putting the hard work and the time into my business, creating the foundations, learning about the industry, learning about how it works, finding where the faults are, seeing where I can improve things. These are the things that I spend time and energy on. And then eventually I will reap the benefits. Giving people attention, doing things for free, being a decent human being. These are all the things that you need to do. The business is no different. Now, I get it if you're a funder or a developer, your primary focus is on the money that you're making from this. It's an investment. If you're putting money into construction or into property, you're doing it for a return. I get that. I get that you often may have stakeholders or people that you're accountable for. I get that too. But what I do with my clients and the people that I support is see a different perspective. I get people to understand the basics of it. I've often come into a project that's in crisis. And when you come into a project that's in crisis, everyone has got the raving hump. No one wants to do on site. They're effing and blinding. Nothing's going to change. And it's all negative, negative, negative. They come in with a different attitude and I expect it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see. And I give a little wink and I listen to people and say, okay, let's see. I'm going to give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? And I start by doing small wins. So I find something that's small, has an impact on each individual, and I change it. And they look at me different. Like, okay, maybe she can change something. Maybe we've got something here. So I have my small wins. And I'll find a small win just to start getting people on my side because I'm good with people. And I'm proving myself to whoever it may be. And I know it's not my first rodeo. I know how these things work. But then a lot of the time I'm authentic. And sometimes all these people want is the truth, especially when you've got subcontractors that have been chasing money and, oh, you're on the next payment run and it doesn't happen. And they've heard all these excuses before. Every company uses the same excuses and the same nonsense. And I've done it myself. The words have come out of my mouth. Hold my hands up. Those words have come out of my mouth numerous times. And sometimes I've had account departments promising me they're going to make payment. I promise to make payment. They don't tell me the truth either. And I get just as frustrated. But sometimes you need to find out what the problem is. And not that it helps anything because people don't get paid, but it does help their mentality and make them feel more worthwhile. This is a problem. This has happened. That has happened. It may be the fact it was priced wrong. And the company went in cheap, wanted to hit with variations. They didn't price it properly. Or even saying to the subcontractor, actually, you've done this. You've caused this problem doing this, and you've contributed to doing this. Not an issue, we're going to resolve it. But to just beat around the bush and ignore people, not have conversations with people and tell people what's going on, that's the worst thing you can do, because people just make their own assumptions and they get frustrated. So saying, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, you've had a rough time. I cannot do this, but I can do that. And I've also had conversations with people saying, look, main contractor's gone bust. I'm working on behalf of the funder or I'm working on behalf of the developer. You've got two choices. Because when a contractor's gone bust, all of a sudden the subcontractor's accounts go through the roof. I've seen it loads of times. And I know when it's happening. And I've been in the industry far too long for people to pull the wool over my eyes like that. And I'll have conversation. I'll be literally as frank as this and say, your account is inflated. Things have been a problem. You've got one or two choices. The main contractor's gone bust. You're not getting your money. You can wait for your money, but you might be lucky if you get 5p to every pound that you offer. But you and I both know the only people that win and get the money out of a liquidation are the liquidators. And there's rarely anything left at the end of it. So you can take that option if you want and hope to get a fiver in 3 years' time, if that's what you want to do. Or we can work together. We can be truthful. You can take responsibility for the things that you haven't done perfectly, because I know you've done X, Y, Z, because obviously I've done my research at this point and I know exactly what's going on. And I can't pay you all of it and you might not get your 20% profit, but I will get you as much as I can, but I'm limited and you need to take responsibility for your actions. Or you can walk away today and try and get your money elsewhere. Let's cut the crap. This is a situation. You either work with me and I'll get you as much as I genuinely can. And I do get them as much as I can. I really, really do. Because I'm also telling the funders and people I'm working with is that you will pay. We're not going to be screwing anyone over here, because that's not how I work. This needs to be ethical. This needs to be right. And you will get the return. But there are ways and means, and you're going to have to pay them what they're entitled to. Or I'm not working with you and I'm not going to get them to complete your project. You can go elsewhere and you can do it another way, and you can screw this contractor over and you can pay double paying someone else to fix it. These are your options, and I'm honest, and I won't work any other way. I'm too long in the tooth and too experienced now not to work any different. And if you're realistic to people and say, yeah, this is great, this is crap, and yes, they've done this wrong, and yes, they've done that wrong. You haven't quite been perfect here, here, and here. It's fine, let's move it on. You do this, I'll do that. And generally what I will always do, especially for a funder or a developer or the client even, is be honest and say, you're going to have to front some money. I need to get credibility with these people. They need to get some money. They need to have proof. They're sick of broken promises. You need to deliver. The only way to deliver is an injection of funds. But I do think slightly differently with funders, because what a funder needs to know is where they're at. And working with funders is totally different. As you probably know, if you've listened to me before, I've got experience working on the professional side with professional practices. I've been a monitoring surveyor, and I've also got main contractor and subcontractor experience. I've been the monitoring surveyor that's gone around and have a look at everything to sign off the drawdown and do the recommendation to the fund to release the money. And I've also been the person that takes the funding monitoring surveyor around, that's hidden things from them and tried to overdraw down to get cash flow. I've always remained ethical and done the best I can and never overexposed anyone. But there is a balance, and it's a bit of an act and a bit of a dance and a bit of a game. I know where to look. I know where things are hidden. I know both sides of the fence, and I also know the responsibility of the monitoring surveyor, and I also understand how funders work and how they see things, and I know all aspects of it. I'm pretty good at dealing with these things. I know how these things work. So when a project is in trouble, and whether that's because the fund monitoring surveyor is going, something's not right here, but I don't know what it is, and because they don't have the on-site experience or the main contracting experience, it's just the fact they don't know where to look and they don't know what's going on. And sometimes I get called in from there. I sometimes get called in because the funder is saying something isn't right here, it's not adding up, whatever it is. I will get the guidance of what they think is wrong and then obviously look at myself. So a lot of the time it will be, oh, we've had to pay something in advance and I've drawed it down and it's gone somewhere else. So the first thing I'll ask is, where's that invoice? See where the date was. Okay, this is where the problem is. Then find out where that money's gone. are things that I would look at for things that they might not have accounted for. Have a look. Is there an extension of time? Like we said before, the fact is that there's been delays and there's variations. They haven't claimed an extension of time. They haven't claimed loss and expense. That's going to be where their cash flow issues are. That's why they're overdrawing down. These are some key things that I look at. I have a service that I offer for funders, and it's an intense service. It's not a low ticket item, it's a high ticket item, but it's incentive. And I go in, I evaluate the project, I evaluate the contractors, I have a look at the information we've got, I go on site, I have a little review, and I come up with an inkling, this is where we're at. I'll give them an idea of where the project is, where their money's gone to some extent. Obviously it's dependent on how other parties respond, and they can make it very, very difficult. But also I will establish the cost to complete. Now, say, for example, you've got a £10 million funding facility, they've drawn down 5 million. I will have a look and say, this is what I think. Actually, they've drawn down 5 million, but the value of works they've completed is only 4. Or it could be, actually, I think the value of works completed is 6. You need to pay them some money now. Or it could be the fact is they've drawn down 6 million. Actually, the value is 6 million, but you're still going to be looking at another 6 million to complete. So my recommendation would be to get another £1 million into the budget. Okay, you're not going to get your 20% return. You're only going to get 19% or whatever it may be. But this is what I suggest. But again, it's much better to break even and be able to get your money back than losing it. Or it will be, this has been overdrawn. You've drawn down 7 million. It's going to cost you another 7 million to complete. Or this is an absolute nightmare. You need to cut your losses and run because you're going to lose money from it. And there's no way of recouping it. You're just throwing good money after bad. And they're the kind of evaluations that I do on a high end level, because yes, I'm one of these people that's quite rare, I believe, from my experience, that I'm able to look at the big picture, but I'm also able to do deep dive analysis. I call it forensic analysis, and I suppose a forensic accountant to some extent, but from a QS level. So I go deep where I need to find out where things are. But I can also see the bigger picture, and I'm very good at picking up even different archetypes, different personality types. And from that archetype or personality type, I often know where I'm looking or where I need to look, because I can look at overviews and I can go into high accuracy situations, and I'm very, very good at looking at risks, what risks I can mitigate, what risks I can't mitigate, and what is going to make or break, and do a risk analysis. I can give people, here are your options. We can do A, B, or C. And in some instances, I'm able to even deliver the project. But by doing the analysis of what's gone on and found out what's gone on within reason, if I very quickly realize that this project is a catastrophe, you haven't got any sign off, you haven't got any building control, the M&E contractor's gone bust and they're not even registered the NIC, something like that, you're going to have to pull this project down and start again. There's no point in me finding out what's going on at that point, unless what they want me to do is look for PI claim or to look at spreading the loss somewhere else to a claim on somebody else's insurance. Then obviously, if that's an option, then I'll do that. If it's the fact is that, okay, we're going to need some additional investment and some of the funders need to have that substantiated, where's that money gone, and find out the reasons, I will do that. And I'll say, this is where it's gone and this is where the issue is. Or actually, do you know what you might be better off doing is maybe a separate loan to the business to get them through this. There are different ways and means of skinning a cat, as they say, and having a look at the different out of the box ideas, because you also want to make sure that people take their responsibility. And I'm more than happy to tell people where they've gone wrong or where they've contributed to the issue. But also, if you're building a big project, like in 10, 20, 30 million pound project, you've got to ruin the reputation of the builder, which is fine. That builder is associated with your project. So you then put a shadow over your project, and that will affect people wanting to buy there or live there. Yeah, you might be angry and you might be annoyed and you might feel let down and disappointed in yourself, whatever term you want to use on that contractor. Actually, by slating that contractor and being public with it and destroying them, is that actually going to benefit you in the long run? Possibly not. Is that going to affect your reputation? Because you've employed them, or you've funded them, or you've got involved in this company. So regardless of whether you think that you're going to come out the hero because you've got rid of them or you've destroyed them or you put them out of business, whatever, you chose them in the first place. That's always going to affect your reputation. People don't always look at things like that. I look at things from a very different perspective. I understand what I can and can't deliver. I understand what is and isn't possible, but I also understand the industry and I know how to get people on side. So funders will look at things and look at figures in a very different way to a commercial director, for example. But because I've worked with both, I figure out how they work. I understand what funders are looking for and what they need. and I understand what all the different individual parties they need. And it's about communication and understanding and getting expectations aligned, what is and isn't possible, and also what else is out there, and getting people to see things from a different perspective, but also getting people to understand other people's perspective, to understand where the issues went wrong in the first place. But often being honest and straight is the first bit, because it's a breath of fresh air, and actually people really respond to it. I don't know why so many people are scared of the truth, because it sounds really corny now, but the amount of people that go, the truth will set you free, is just so true. And I've watched people, how they respond. And yes, sometimes I tell them the truth and they know it. And sometimes they'll be angry, the fact that, oh, I know it, and they'll be frustrated. And I just sit there and let them rant, say they're not shouting at me, it's not aimed at me, I don't take it personally. And I just sit there and listen, and then they'll calm down, and they will always feel better for knowing the truth. And sometimes they don't like the truth because actually they've played a part in it and they were totally oblivious, and they're like, yeah, okay, it doesn't feel great in the moment, but afterwards they breathe a sigh of relief, because deep down they knew. It's out in the open, and there's a fear of being out in the open. There's a fear of being truthful. And sometimes you just need to know the reality is, this is where we're at. This is what's happened. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to know why. It's just, this is the way it is. Myself included at times, if my husband's listening to this, he'll be rolling his eyes at me. Yeah, he can give me an answer to something. It's not always good enough. I get that, hold my hands up. And that's the same with a lot of people. That's human nature. But having an idea and being truthful when you've been lied to for months is beneficial. And actually, it's a really good way of turning people around. And if you go in and say, right, this is a problem, this is what's happened, this is where we're at. Yes, this is risk, because they're scared. They're owed money, they're scared. And this is where we're going to go, and this is what we're going to do. Put your money where your mouth is. Actually deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Small wins, get people on side. And actually, it's not that difficult to transform things, but you've got to be prepared to see things from all aspects. You've got to be prepared to take your stance on it. You haven't employed the right contractors, the right consultants, whatever it may be. Everyone is responsible for a project failing majority of the time. Again, there are the rare exceptions, but generally, every person has contributed to that failing in one way or another. Some people's contribution or aspects or businesses are much greater than others, but generally it's never just one party. So raising awareness, getting them to understand the industry, getting them to understand their risks, getting them to look at things from a different perspective, getting them to look at other aspects of longer term value, not immediate return on investment or pots, coming up with, what about this idea or that idea, putting different ideas on the table, and then using that to get them on board, to come to a middle ground, and being that middle person between either the contractor and the developer, or the funder and the developer, or the developer and the contractor, or the contractor and the subcontractors, or the developer and the funder to the subcontractors, because the main contractor's gone bust. Whoever it is getting people aligned, listening to them. One of the great things of being female in the industry is being able to listen to them and letting them feel heard. We're all people. And a lot of the time, a lot of the business leaders, and the majority of them are men, are frustrated because they're not being listened to and they're not being heard. But also they're often will open up to me in a very different way than they would to a man. So I often get the real truth, the deep, dark truth, not the surface level, the actual truth of what's behind it. And when you really know what the circumstances is and what the frustrations are and what's caused the problem in the first place, the resolution is not that difficult, and it does simplify things when you know the truth. There is a skill set there as well of getting the information out of people, and I'm very good at getting information out of people because people trust me, because I am authentic, and that is the most important thing, is my reputation for being authentic and honest and delivering. So yes, it's not easy, but I also am a firm believer of picking up the phone and having a conversation. Not all the time, because often you have to protect yourself in these situations. I will make sure that I'm protecting so my clients. Text can be construed, and I've read messages before and took them one way because of the state of mind I was in at the time, and then reread them at another point and thought, oh, actually it's not quite as arsey as I thought it was. Actually, they're being quite reasonable. And you can also judge an interaction with someone with a conversation. You can actually learn a lot with a conversation. So I'm a firm believer of having conversations, putting money where my mouth is, but also putting the money is not always the best option, and sometimes it's the worst. Sometimes it has to be done, obviously, and it's about disaster recovery and loss prevention. But sometimes it's just, okay, you might have a slightly smaller return or slightly smaller profit or slightly smaller ROI, but you've got a project that's completed. You're looking at a 5% ROI, for example, instead of a £5 million loss. I know which one I'd choose. In fact, I'd prefer to cut even on that project and just wait for the property to raise in value or get the rental income or whatever it may be. I'd much rather break even than lose 5 million. If you've got the option of lose 5 million, break even, or make 1 million, obviously we'd want to make the million, but then out of ego, you could do the opposite. So It's getting people to understand, trust people expectations, fill in the blanks that they don't understand, find out where the gaps are, find out where the problems are, find what the solutions are, the risks are from working with these companies, turning these construction companies around, because I've got the inside information. I know how to do it. I know where things go wrong. I know where money hemorrhages out from construction businesses, because I'm the person that comes in and finds the holes and fills the gap. It's quite simple for me to do that. And sometimes I blow people's brains with the information. I give them the information overload, but I can put my money where my mouth is and I can deliver it. I'll never say a project is salvageable if I can't deliver it myself. And I never expect anyone to do what I won't do myself. In all honesty, one of the reasons that I'm transferring my focus onto supporting funders and developers rather than the main contractors is, one, the main contractors are exhausted at this point. And in all honesty, I struggle to get paid for main contractors. And actually, sometimes it's much more effective to work on behalf of the funders, because they will have the money and they will find the money, because they're the ones that are going to benefit from it the most, but also protecting them in the long run and protecting them from the contractor. But also coming from the funders, it's easier to get the contractor to do what's necessary, because I will then deliver and get what they need, and they have confidence that they're going to not get screwed over because I'm the middle person. And I found that that's a much more effective way of working, because everyone's on side. And actually, once you get people back in the flow of things, get things in writing, get things leveled out, get everything out in the open, get a solution, realign expectations, come up with commitments, and then actually just deliver the project. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone does what they're supposed to do. The project gets delivered, and the energy behind it is totally different, because everyone is then re-injected with energy and they're realigned and they want to get the project done and they have faith in each other. And it's like when you need a good row in a relationship, whether it be a friendship, romantic relationship, mother-daughter, whatever. Sometimes you just need to get this stuff out in the open. Once you've got it out in the open and you see where things are coming from, you see other people's perspectives, you actually see things very differently. And then all of a sudden you come back to a plan, you get back together, and everyone lives happily ever after till the next time, and you can get things delivered. And it's no different in business. Getting things out in the open, finding what the truth is, and then finding a way to deliver it with the shirts on everybody's backs for the benefit of all. If you're looking at that perspective to make sure that everyone benefits from the revised arrangement or the new way of working, then you'll get a much better response from people, and you've got a much better success rate, because everybody's working against the same goal, and you haven't got people holding back because they think they're going to get screwed. So I'm actively looking to work for funders and developers much more, because I think it's more effective. And I actually think the impact on the industry is going to be far greater, because one, they're going to learn through an experience with me. They will see things slightly different. They will get the benefit of my skill set and where to look, and potentially there'll be situations where they'll see things way before they need to get me involved, and they don't need to get me involved in the future. And they'll also see things at the front end of projects and developers and see risks that they hadn't seen before. But also it affects the industry in a much bigger way, because by not pulling the money, not so many contractors are going bust and losing money, because it filters down throughout the industry. And also it creates nervousness, and when people are nervous, they held back, and it's so much better if we can all work together and stay authentic. And the few projects that I have done have been really successful and restored faith in humanity in some aspects, and in restored funders' faith in main contractors, and main contractors' faith in funders, etc., and developers, because there can be some difficulties between the parties and assumptions and judgments and other nasty things. So I want to do a lot more of it, because I think it's got the biggest impact on the industry.
What really stands out is that construction crisis takeover isn't about pointing fingers. It's about restoring control, protecting investment, and creating a credible recovery path. By stabilising operations, exposing risks, and providing clear reporting, funders gain confidence and can make informed decisions about whether to continue, restructure, or exit. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
If you found value in today's episode, hit subscribe so you never miss a new release, and share it with someone in the industry who needs to hear it. To learn more, access resources, or find out how Michelle Carr and Construction Alchemy can help you protect your projects, solve problems, and boost your profits, visit constructionalchemy.co.uk. Together, we can change the industry, one project, one company, and one episode at a time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are based on the personal experiences of Michelle Carr and her guests. They are for general information only and should not be relied upon as professional or legal advice. Always seek your own independent advice before making decisions. Neither Michelle Carr nor Construction Alchemy accepts liability for any loss damage, or consequences arising from actions taken based on this podcast. Thank you for listening.